The level of meth use in this city has reached an epidemic.
Tonight, an addicting toxic poison is gaining ground in Winnipeg.
We don't have a coherent national policy to dispose of nuclear waste.
First Nations and concerned citizens rally to try and stop a threat to the Ottawa River.
Food sovereignty is really for people to have a right to the access of their traditional foods.
And the Nish Dish amps up traditional foods for people in the 416. Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Brittany Hobson. Dennis Ward is away tonight. We start in Prince Edward Island, where two Mi'kmaq First Nations are in court this week to establish their rights. They want to be consulted on what happens to Crown land in the province. APTN's Justin Brake has the story.
It's a high-stakes case for the Mi'kmaq on Prince Edward Island.
And any time we feel that our Mi'kmaq rights are infringed upon or in jeopardy, it's our responsibility as leaders to step up to the plate and protect those rights at all costs.
The Mi'kmaq Confederacy, which represents two First Nations on the island, says the province did not adequately consult with them over the sale of the government-owned Mill River Golf Course and Resort in 2017. David Rosenberg, a lawyer representing the Mi'kmaq in their application for a judicial review of the sale, says the province may not have understood how the duty to consult has evolved as a legal concept in recent years.
It may be, and I'm only guessing this, that the province was still entrenched in its old procedures, which was business as usual.
Lawyers for the government argued the province didn't have a duty to consult, and that if they did, they adequately met that requirement. In court filings, lawyers for the province argued that since the Mi'kmaq have only asserted their title to PEI and haven't established Aboriginal title in court, any Crown duty to consult that may have been triggered in relation to the transfer of lands was at the low end of the consultation spectrum as set out by the Supreme Court of Canada. But Rosenberg argues the Crown has a duty to meaningfully consult with the Mi'kmaq, even before Aboriginal title is established.
The Crown is under an obligation to consult with the First Nations about that territory or their resources so they don't disappear between the time when a First Nation brings its claim and when it can be established in court.
Cheryl Simon, a member of Abegweit First Nation and a lawyer specializing in Indigenous governance, says the chiefs have worked hard to establish an effective working relationship with the province.
I worry that the province is going to have a larger impact on the overall reconciliation of Aboriginal issues within the province.
The Mi'kmaq argued in court that consultations are particularly important since most of the land on PEI has already been turned into private property. Simon agrees.
I think that the significance of the acreage involved has to be taken into account when you consider that the province only has 12% Crown land available to work with when it comes to dealing with any types of potential Aboriginal title cases or issues.
Lawyers for the province will conclude their arguments on Friday. Representatives from the Confederacy say the outcome could have major implications for the Mi'kmaq in PEI and throughout the traditional unceded Mi'kmaq territory in Atlantic Canada. Justin Brake, APTN National News, Charlottetown.
Canadian Nuclear Laboratories is back under the watchful eye of a number of groups. The private company runs the Chalk River Lab 2 hours northwest of Ottawa and is looking to extend its operating license. Annette Francis explains.
Citizens and environmental groups are against an application to permanently store nuclear waste at the Chalk River plant. Anishinaabe Nation Grand Chief Patrick Badabi says they have an innate right to protect the land and water, that it's insane to store radioactive waste a short distance from the Ottawa River, and the risks associated with the storage and transportation of the radioactive waste cannot be accepted.
You know, just a few days ago, January 7th, there was a collision on the Montreal River north of Sault Ste. Marie, involved a cargo of low-grade uranium concentrate. You know, we really dodged the bullet there. Although they sent the spill-up crews, we never really will be told how much leaked out of that, you know, when those things collided on that hill.
The Canadian Nuclear Laboratories is also applying for a 10-year operating license renewal. It's a grave concern, says Lynn Jones, a member of the Concerned Citizens of Renfrew County and area. That's why over 50 groups are intervening at the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission's public hearings next week.
The license that's being proposed is also greatly watered down from previous licenses. Half of the license conditions have been removed, and what's left appears to make it easier for the consortium to carry out its plans with very little oversight from the regulator.
After Thursday morning's press conference, the group marched through the streets, delivering messages to the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, the Minister of Environment, and to Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson. Judith Miller lives in Ottawa. She says nuclear waste in the Ottawa River is everyone's concern. That's why she's here.
I think it's important to all Canadians because we don't have a coherent national policy to dispose of nuclear waste. We have it, we know we have it, we know we have to do something about it, but we don't have a coherent policy. There are different policies in different parts of the country, all across the country. And we need a unified approach to this problem.
The Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission begins its public hearings on the Chalk River license Tuesday in Pembroke, Ontario. And at Francis APTN National News, Ottawa.
Construction of the Trans Mountain Pipeline in British Columbia is in full swing, but that hasn't stopped its opponents from finding ways to stop it. Construction workers and delivery trucks arriving at Kinder Morgan's Westridge Terminal in Burnaby were greeted by protesters calling themselves the Justin Trudeau Brigade. The brigade kept everyone from getting into the construction site for about 3 hours. This is the 9th time these protesters have done this type of action. So far, they've avoided being arrested.
We are going to do this again and again, and more people are joining us. We don't need a lot of people at any one time. That's why this is so easy. You can see there are not even 10 people here, but we got it totally shut down.
We welcome your comments on this or any of our stories. Here's how to contact us. Send an email to news@aptn.ca. Like our APTN National News Facebook page. Follow us on Twitter at APTN News, or go to our website, aptnnews.ca. The city of Winnipeg has a methamphetamine crisis. That's what grassroots organizations in the city are saying after the body of a 29-year-old Indigenous woman was found frozen last month. She had been struggling with a meth addiction. Now those groups are calling on the city and the province to do something about the meth problem before it becomes worse.
So, I mean, it could have been so much worse.
Earlier this month, a client staying at Winnipeg's Moorburg House barricaded himself in this room and set a mattress on fire. Marion Willis, founder of the Transitional Housing for Men, says the man was suffering from meth psychoses.
We know this person, and believe it or not, this person's actually quite a nice guy. You know, he would never do anything like that, except that he had a big slip, and the slip was with meth. He entered into a really deep level of psychoses, and that was the outcome.
Willis says this incident, along with the death of 29-year-old Wendy Sinclair in December, show the extent of the growing crystal meth problem in the city. Sinclair was struggling with a meth addiction at the time of her death. Her body was found frozen in a Winnipeg back lane.
The level of meth use in this city has reached an epidemic. The meth psychoses is creating a crisis that is beyond measure right now.
Willis isn't alone in voicing her concerns. James Favel, founder of the Bear Clan, says the patrol group has seen a significant increase in meth use on the streets.
And in our first year of operation, we found between June and November when the snow fell, we found about between 12 and 18 needles. The second year, we found 300. This last year, we're over 4,000 already.
According to Willis and Favel, accessibility and cost are to blame for the increase. Costs can be as low as $10 a hit, and the high can last for up to 15 hours. Ruth Dixon knows firsthand the devastating effects of addiction. Her 28-year-old son started using meth a year ago.
He wasn't the same after that. Once he took it, he wasn't the same. He's not the son that I knew before.
She works with youth in the North End. She says the effects from intergenerational trauma are still embedded in the community, and kids are seeking ways to self-medicate.
They turn to drugs for comfort, for a way out, escape. So that's a big, it's devastating to see our people in that condition. Alcohol and marijuana are no longer the painkillers back then like it was, but it's now stronger drugs.
Winnipeg police are also struggling to address the issue. They say it's fueling property and violent crimes. So far, the province has done little to work with organizations on combating the crisis, according to Willis.
We are the ones that can inform a strategy. We are the ones that can mobilize people, and we are the ones that can act quickly. And yet we're invisible to this provincial government.
Earlier this year, the province upped their funding for the Addictions Foundation of Manitoba, but Willis says money needs to go towards the creation of a drug stabilization unit. Time for a quick break, and then we'll bring you the story of Bridget Laquette, who's making history as the first ever Indigenous player to suit up for Team Canada's Olympic women's hockey team.
Hello, I'm Todd Lamoran. Here's what's coming up on Nation to Nation. Chief Commissioner Marion Buller defends the inquiry's work and when she'll formally ask for an extension from Ottawa. As well, an Indigenous leader drops by to talk about how ready his communities are for the legalization of cannabis. And finally, what will the newly created National Reconciliation Commission do? One of its interim board members explains. That's immediately following the national news.
Here's a look at Thursday's weather forecast starting on the East Coast. -3 in St. John's, -7 in Halifax. It's sunny and -18 in Happy Valley Goose Bay, -19 in La Grande. Cloudy and -2 in Montreal, also -2 in Val-d'Or. Ottawa is sitting at -3, 0 in Sarnia. It's snowing and +1 in Timmins, a balmy +5 in Thunder Bay. Heading to northern Manitoba, -18 in Churchill, -7 in Norway House. +4 in Winnipeg and sunny with a high of +2 in Brandon. Mild day across parts of Saskatchewan, +3 in Regina and Swift Current. And 0 in Meadow Lake, -14 in Stony Rapids. Welcome back. This next story is about an 8-part series airing on APTN. It's called 1491, and it takes a look at how Indigenous people on this side of the ocean lived before Christopher Columbus arrived in the Caribbean in 1492. APTN's Tina House has this report.
1491, The Untold Story of the Americas Before Columbus, is a new series written by a team of Indigenous writers and directors. Shot in locations in Peru, Mexico, USA, and Canada, it attempts to answer the questions: who are we and where did we come from? Filmed through a series of reenactments and interviews with Indigenous archaeologists and experts, 1491 takes us back before contact to how Indigenous people lived, thrived, and created.
In Northwest North America, artists carved intricate masks from cedar, yew, and alder, using distinct form lines that can be seen on 5,000-year-old petroglyphs. West Coast nations created masks depicting humans, animals, and supernatural beings for ceremonies called potlatches.
Dr. Eldon Yellowhorn is an archaeology professor at Simon Fraser University in Burnaby. He's the author of First Peoples in Canada, and he appears regularly throughout the series.
It makes a good counterpoint to Canada, the Story of Us, and other documentary series such as this, because it does give a balanced view, you know. And I think one of the key elements that makes 1491 so unique is that all the people who were the experts in archaeology or ancient DNA were all Native people.
1491 explores the many Indigenous cultures across the Americas, like the Inca and their vast knowledge of metallurgy.
They live in an area where the ore was abundant and with techniques that perhaps were superior to the European ones.
There were a tremendous variety of cultures, but also of ideologies and mythologies.
And one of those ideologies discussed is how Indigenous knowledge of plants as medicine is still used today.
When people used them traditionally, they would be used in a complex with prayers and ceremony. And you can't underestimate the power of the ceremony.
1491, The Untold Story of the Americas Before Columbus, airs on APTN, NITV in Australia, and ZDF in Germany. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
Students in Calgary got the chance to cheer on the Canadian women's hockey team as they get ready for the Winter Olympics in Pyeongchang. Among those players is Canada's very first Indigenous person to play on the team. Tamara Pimentel has the story.
From the small community of Mallard, Manitoba, to representing her country and making history, Bridget Laquette is the first First Nations to be named to the Canadian women's Olympic hockey team.
First Nation, I guess that's just, it's an honor for me, and it's just, it's something it's truly special and exciting for me, and, I'm humbled by it.
While preparing for the upcoming Olympics in South Korea, Laquette's biggest fans cheered her on from the stands. For months, the 25-year-old defender has been connecting with these students from Eagle Lodge Family School.
Doing video chats with them and everything, and sending them videos, sending them work to do, but to actually finally get to see them and meet them and interact with them, it was pretty amazing.
It was really cool to see Bridget on the ice. I can learn what she experienced throughout how she got onto the team.
And after the practice,
I wasn't expecting them to honor me with a song and honor my friends with a song, so I'm just super excited to have them here today.
The team's first game is a match against Russia on February 11. As Laquette hits the ice, not only will she be representing Canada, but all Indigenous as well, including these students who call her their mentor.
I want to be that role model for them, and just to be the best player, best person I could possibly be just for them, to show them that they could do it too.
Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Calgary.
Big congratulations to Bridget, and good luck to the rest of the team. They're headed to the Olympics. Those start on February 9th. Access to traditional foods can be challenging, especially in the city. A restaurant in Toronto is trying to bring those foods to the urban Indigenous population and share it with non-Aboriginal food lovers alike. Beverly Andrews brings us more.
In most cities, there's no district dedicated to Indigenous culture, so it can be hard for Aboriginal people to find traditional foods. Chef Joel White Duck Ringette hopes to make that search a little easier.
Nish Dish is on this journey of First Nations food sovereignty, and food sovereignty is really for people to have a right to the access of their traditional foods.
Nish Dish, a restaurant and catering company in Toronto, aims to serve more traditional foods.
So a lot of our diets a long time ago were hugely plant-based. And yes, we ate game, and yes, we ate fish, and we ate other things depending on what regions.
Indigenous diets have changed dramatically over the years. Today, ingredients can be hard to source. Relying on one or two suppliers that are far away is a barrier many restaurants don't have to deal with. It takes a lot of work and research to find suppliers that can provide the ingredients for a traditional menu.
Food sovereignty is so important. In order for us to be successful at it, we need the whole community's help. And that's how Nish Dish came to light. It's all my friends and my community members that have been helping me through the years to create this menu and to find all these recipes and to find access to this food, help me get this place here.
The menu changes with the season and availability. Of course, anyone can enjoy this food. Many visitors come to sample dishes that are not widely available in other restaurants. Beverly Andrews, APTN National News, Toronto.
Looks really good. Time for another break. Coming up, we have a preview for the newest episodes of Investigative airing this Friday. Melissa Ridgen brings us the story of a deadly crash that changed a community. Here's the rest of Thursday's weather outlook, picking back up in northern Alberta, 0 in Grand Prairie, -3 in Fort McMurray, sunny and +4 in Calgary and Medicine Hat. Heading to the west coast, +8 in Vancouver, Victoria, and Tofino, +5 in Prince Rupert, -2 in Fort St. John. In Yukon, -12 in Whitehorse, -11 in Dawson City. Over to the NWT, -9 in Trout Lake, -14 in Yellowknife, -10 in Colville Lake, -15 in Sax Harbor. Chilly day in parts of Nunavut, -27 in Chesterfield, -28 in Baker Lake. Sunny and -24 in Clyde River, -28 in Resolute. It was a horrific collision on a deserted stretch of highway, and it changed the Delaware Nation of Moraviantown forever. But the police investigation that followed found more questions than answers. Melissa Ridgen brings us the crash tomorrow on APTN Investigates. Here is a preview.
Hit by a car while walking down this road in Moraviantown, the Delaware Nation. Just stepped away from where Bailey Jacobs lived with her grandmother, Alma Jacobs.
Right at that stop sign.
Bailey died 2 days shy of her 17th birthday. Her half-brother Tanner White-Eye and best friend Jordy White-Eye were with her. They were also hit. Was the driver not paying attention? Did he stop at the four-way? Where was he coming from and going to at 1:40 in the morning? Was alcohol a factor? How was it ruled out? Who took custody of the driver? We talked to 3 witnesses who said he wasn't detained for nearly an hour. How did they determine speed wasn't a factor when they didn't even do a speed analysis? And if you're going slowly with your high beams on, how do you not see 3 people in front of you? How is a 350-pound girl thrown to her death and a young man paralyzed? Why weren't people on the scene interviewed until weeks after they called police who hadn't bothered to reach out to them? These are some of the questions people in Moraviantown still have. When we sat down with Alma to discuss the crash, it would have been Bailey's 18th birthday.
Like she was here and then she's gone. That's how quick. But it changed our lives completely.
You can catch APTN Investigates Friday evenings right after the news. Now that things have warmed up a little in southern Alberta, penguins at the Calgary Zoo have been allowed to take a little stroll outside. The king penguins finally got some fresh air after being forced to stay inside because of a cold snap. They waddled their way along a trail as part of the zoo's 6th annual penguin walk. One of the penguins is just 5.5 months old. Those little guys are pretty cute. That's your APTN National News for this Thursday. For news anytime, visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Brittany Hobson. Have a great night.